Hello, followers of fear. This is Rami Unger. I hope you're doing well this Sunday afternoon. So, a lot of my writer friends and colleagues have been posting videos of themselves reading from their work on YouTube, and I thought that would be fun to do. So, this is my contribution. I will be reading from my short story Car Chasers, which was published in The Binge-Watching Cure 2 from Clarion Books back in December. Now, if you're not familiar with Car Chasers, it can be best summed up as a cross between the Fast and Furious movies and a ghost story. Yeah, I wrote that story, and I'm extremely grateful that it was published with so many other great names in this book: Armand Rosamilia, Nick Junker, Bill Adler, Amanda Crum, just so many different writers contributing their scary stories, and I was very, very grateful to have mine among them. I will be reading from part of the story, and afterwards, I will be making a special announcement at the end of the video, so stick around for that. I will also be occasionally taking sips from diet soda, and when that runs out, from a water bottle, because let's face it, reading out loud is thirsty work. I am not an actor, and I believe they're trained to do this sort of speaking thing for minutes on end, but I'm not, gonna be honest. So I've got to stay hydrated. See what I mean? Also, we may hear my neighbors walking down the apartment hallway, or the apartment building hallway, or walking around outside occasionally. Just part of a living in an apartment building. So, giving you a heads up. And without further ado, let's see. I kind of wish I had my finger on the first page before I started this, but well. Here we are, Car Chasers by Rami Unger. There are many tales that come out of Shan Woods. Nearly all of them have to do with Chasers Run. One of those stories is the tragic tale of Asher Greenwich and Donnie Griggs, which has been retold and changed around so much that even those who were there when it happened aren't sure what's true and what's not. This is the actual version of events, or the one at least convoluted by soap opera embellishment. It all started on Saturday, July 6th, during one of the hottest summers on record. Now, normally on a summer weekend, kids would be going on dates, hanging out in movie theaters or in friends' basements, or getting into trouble in the name of fun. But in the county where Shannon Woods is located, the first Saturday of each month is special. Teens, college kids, and even some adults pile into cars, trucks, and make their way to the clearing outside the entrance of the forest, where they set up concession booth stands, and tailgates, and betting booths, and wait in anticipation for Chaser's Run. And of course, Asher Greenwich was there as well, as he had been nearly every month since freshman year. His yearbook photos all showed a well-dressed, wiry young man with a mop of brown hair and glasses. But on a normal night, he liked to wear jeans and t-shirts with different bands or cars on them. As soon as he arrived, he sought out Louis Dreyer, who had been organizing Chaser's Run since anyone could remember, to whom you paid $50 cash if you wanted to participate in a race that night. Like many people that night, Asher paid for a spot in the first race. Feeling confident tonight, Asher? Said Louis, counting out tens. Yes, sir, Asher answered. It wasn't just teenage bravado or an automatic response. He really did feel confident, like he just knew tonight was going to be a good night for him. He couldn't figure out where this feeling came from. Perhaps it was just experience, or maybe it was the weird aura Shan Woods exudes. But he had a feeling he'd make at least second place during his race. Hell, he might even make it into the finalist race, go up against whoever won the other races. He'd probably lose that one, but at least he'd had fun while he was at it. Asher drove his car, a black 2000 Honda Civic he'd got in third hand, and spent the better part of his sophomore year fixing up into a respectable racer, to the starting line, where the other drivers were already assembled and ready to race. Asher spotted Garrett Holmes with his dark blue 2010 Nissan Armada, Angie Whitney with her black 2012 Mazda CX-9, in sporting painted-on flowers and a red dragon, and the Jackson twins, doing a rock, paper, scissors over who would drive the 2008 Subaru WRX they shared. Tough competition, but Asher had a secret weapon built into his Honda, and he had luck tonight. "Yes, sir," he said under his breath, adjusting his mirror and checking his equipment. "Tonight's my lucky night. Nobody's going to beat me this race." When everyone was behind the wheel of their car, Louis ambled into the middle of the road, standing between Asher's Honda and Angie's Mazda. The crowd that had come to watch fell silent, eager for the night's events to start. "You guys know the rules," he intoned, the same speech he always gave during the first race of the evening. "First one to make the circuit and get over the finish line gets to drive in the finalists race. Do what you can to win, but don't be dirty or a dick. Stay on the roads and don't let the chasers get you." That last part always sent shivers down drivers' spines, and through most of the audience too. Everyone who went to Chasers Run had seen the Chasers, and they knew just what they were capable of. Getting caught was the last thing any driver wanted to happen, usually because it meant that would be the last thing that would ever happen to them. Cars revved their engines. Inside his Honda, Asher squeezed the wheel, biting his lower lip, a bead of sweat rolling down the side of his head. "One!" Louis shouted, to the sound of more revved engines and cheering crowds. Asher gripped the wheel harder. Already his vision was narrowing, so that the world was comprised of the woods, race route, the three other competitors, and Louis's voice. 2, 3! Louis raised his arm and let it fall. Angie and the Jackson twins surged forward, nearly ramming into each other as the road narrowed right in front of the entrance to the woods. Asher put his foot down on the pedal, moving into third place before Garrett Holmes could get in front of him. "Croatoan!" Asher shouted as he entered the woods. It was a phrase he always shouted when he raced, a magic spell he'd picked up from a comic book as a kid, and which he had gotten into the habit of saying for luck since his first race, when he'd sat with Donnie in the back of Jared Feck's Nissan Rogue back in freshman year and discovered the magic that was Chasers Run. The Jackson twins were up ahead in first, with Angie just behind them, trying to find a way to pass ahead of them. Feeling Garrett moving up behind him, Asher sped up so that he was right behind Angie. The road twisted to the right, widening out a little, and Asher took advantage of it to move into second place. He glanced out to his right, caught Angie looking at him with shocked anger, and grinned. Good. Second place was good. Now he just had to keep his eyes open, look for opportunities and for obstacles, and he could win. There! Asher sensed it before he saw it. The first obstacle of the night. The first chaser. It took the form of a woman wrapped in shawls, her arms waving spasmodically, her eyes bulging out of her skull, some sort of babbling coming out of her mouth. The woman was translucent, ghostly green, and was flying above the ground, her body bobbing up and down like an airborne dolphin. She was coming from the right towards the road. The gibberer, Asher thought, calculating in the ghost's angle. Judging by the direction and speed she was going, the gibber would hit the road soon. If he kept the same speed as he was, there was a good chance that she would hit him right after hitting the road. Cautiously, Asher decreased his speed. The Jackson twins followed suit. It paid off because the gibber flew into the road, overshot back into the woods, turned in a wide arc, and shot straight for their cars at an angle. The same time as she turned, though, the Jackson twins, Asher and Angie Whitney, sped up so that the gibber missed Angie's back bumper by a couple of yards. The gibber, for her part, didn't let these two misses disturb her. Instead, she circled around again and flew after them, her rolling eyes and hysterical arms reaching for them through the shortening distance. Asher kept his foot on the pedal, looking for an opportunity to pass ahead of the Jackson twins. He knew that if push came to shove, the Jackson twins would speed up so that the rest of them would avoid the gibber getting them. But Asher wanted to put as much distance between himself and her as possible. Plus, there was a prospect of winning, which required him getting ahead. The road widened a little. In front of his many runs on this road, Asher knew that there was a turn up ahead. If he timed it right, he could not only pull ahead, but he could give himself some major distance, further increasing his chances of winning. Of course, that was if the Jackson twins, who were experienced racers too, didn't get in the way. If he failed, there was a chance he could fall off the road. If that happened, getting back onto the road and finishing the race would be the least of his problems. The turn was coming up. Asher drifted a little to the left and started counting. The Jackson twins were pulling ahead into the turn. Asher followed, putting his foot down on the brake pedal. Then, as he turned to straighten out, he pressed a button on his wheel, activating his new secret weapon, which he'd added before school let out last month. Like a rocket, Asher's Honda zoomed forward ahead of the Jacksons, fueled by a tank of nitro hidden under the passenger seat. In seconds, the Jacksons were eating his dust, and Asher was whooping like a madman as their headlights became tiny pinpricks. I still have another tank left for the finalist race, he thought, pumping his fist. Returning his speed to an easy 30 miles per hour, Asher let himself relax a little. With the gibber back with the Jackson twins and Angie and Garrett Holmes back in fourth place, he would coast along easily till he hit the finish line. Turning up the stereo volume, Asher let Papa Roach roll over him. A few times he thought he saw something glowing green, but was always far away in the woods, which meant it couldn't hurt him. For now, anyway. Finally, the entrance came into view and Asher passed over the finish line, winner by a long shot. He got out of the car and bounced to the assembled cheering crowd. I was right, he thought, getting back in his car and driving off the race course. Tonight's my lucky night. And he was sure that his luck hadn't run out yet. As he stepped out of his car again, a well-dressed young man with Disney Channel star good looks ran up to him, pulling him into a hug. Dude, that was a record, said Donnie Griggs, smacking Asher lightly on the back. Back by the entrance to the woods, Garrett Holmes came out to take a surprise second, followed a minute or so later by Angie, and finally the Jackson twins, the back of their car sporting burn marks. Did you do something to your car? You had to. That old piece of shit could never beat those newer cars. Asher smiled, glad to see Donnie, who had been his best friend since grade school. Their relationship had begun over the fact that they had been the only kids in the third grade who had cell phones, which made them the epitome of cool in the eyes of their peers. Of course, they had very different reasons for having their phones. Donnie was a Griggs, which in their county meant wealth and country nobility. So he had a cell phone just for the sake of having one. Asher, meanwhile, was a latchkey kid with an overworked dad and an absent mom, so he actually needed the phone. Even so, this had led to a friendship between the two boys that had lasted through their school years. Sorry, man, Asher replied, smiling. I'm just a good driver, that's all. Bullshit, man, Donnie replied. You did something to your car. I know you did. I bet you've been pulling extra hours at Louis' garage, haven't you? You got something hidden under your hood, don't you? Tell me! And wipe that smirk off your face. Only I'm allowed to smirk like that. Dude, lay off! Asher laughed as Donnie tried to noogie him. You'll just have to race me and find out yourself. Well, all right then, my man, said Donnie, letting Asher go and looking over at his yellow Mustang, the aptly titled Lady Blur, another symbol of the Greggs' enormous wealth and their very generous use of it. Just don't cry when I kick your ass, okay? Sure thing, dude. Asher and Donnie grabbed each other's hands and pulled each other in for another hug. Asher, said a voice. Both boys looked to see Melissa Hoover standing beside the Honda, looking nervous. Great job. Good luck in the final race. Asher looked surprised but said, yeah, thanks. Then clearing his throat, thanks, Melissa. Appreciate it. That seemed to make Melissa even more nervous, though it also seemed to make her happy as well. Melissa Hoover's yearbook photo is at odds with the girl from the rumors, a seductress who could hold the attention of two different men and drive them wild with desire to the point of insanity. But that's because Melissa wasn't a seductress. She was just a normal girl. Her family didn't have that much money. Her clothes were mostly secondhand, and she was an introvert, which was why she didn't usually wear makeup or try to be flashy or put herself out there. It probably didn't help her social skills that she had skipped a grade and was a year younger than most of her classmates either. That night, Melissa seemed to be trying to move past her quietness, and that interested Asher. He watched as she kept looking like she was on the verge of saying something big, something important, and he couldn't help but notice the way the moonlight played upon her hair. It was almost kind of pretty. Hey, Donnie, a voice called, the kind of voice that draws the attention of anyone who's heard it, especially if they know who it belongs to. Donnie and Asher looked away from Melissa as Evan and Stiller approached, sashaying her hips from side to side in that sexy way she had. Blonde, stunning, and confident, Evan was every guy's wet dream, and her looks, set as his volleyball team captain and successful lawyer father, made her the perfect girlfriend for the great Donnie Griggs, to every other guy's despair. Don't you have a race to run? She said, grabbing her boyfriend by the lapels of his jacket and looking at him in that way that girls use when they want their boyfriend's full attention. You better do well tonight. Got it? Donnie grinned, the grin men reserve for when they have some hot chick all over them, and they're too stupid to even realize how hypnotized they are. Yeah, babe, he said, his hands traveling along her hips. All around the area, every available straight guy and a couple of girls looked at Donnie and felt a bit more jealousy than usual. Even Asher, who normally didn't envy Donnie anything, not wealth, not popularity, not fancy toys, envied him for the girl he dated and probably slept with. I'll get right on it. See you after the race. Donnie walked off, looking like he was high on something really good. That left Asher with Evan, and that made him nervous. He looked around for Melissa, but she disappeared at some point during the 10-second exchange between Donnie and Evan. Hi, Evan, he said, rather lamely. Sweat had ran down the back of his neck, and he was sure it wasn't because of the warm summer air. Lovely night, huh? Inside, Asher berated himself for sounding like the world's biggest loser. Hey, Asher, she said, looking at him like she'd only just noticed him. Nice driving out there. You think you'll win in the final race tonight? Well, said Asher, rubbing the hair on the back of his head. Donnie's racing too, and he's got Lady Blur. I'd be lucky to get past that, especially during the final race. Well, if you do end up beating him, Evan replied, placing a hand on Asher's elbow, which immediately sent Asher's stomach into backflips. Don't be too spectacular about it. You know how Donnie gets when he's not the best, and I want to have an actual conversation with him later. You mean while he brags about what a great racer he is? Asher joked, knowing how his friend got after a spectacular win, how difficult he could be after a spectacular loss. Evan laughed, Yeah, something like that. And with that, she sauntered off to her group of friends, leaving Asher feeling pent up and wishing she'd stayed. In the meantime, he occupied himself by checking his car for problems so she'd be ready to race again soon. At the same time, three more races went by. Donnie won his by a mile with Lady Blur. Pat Bertram won the third race by a hair in her 2008 Volkswagen Beetle against Ismail Ofari's 2009 Honda Accord. And the fourth race was a tie, which was broken by a coin toss that allowed Keith Joel to go to the final race in his 2010 Subaru Legacy. By the time those races were over, not only had Asher made sure that his car was in perfect working order, but he'd worked out everything Evan had aroused in him and was ready to race again. Pumped to go, Asher got into his car and drove up to the starting line. Their three competitors, including Donnie, pulled up beside him in a row, and Louis made his way out to the road. Louis made the boring speech he did for each finalist's race. Engines roared in anticipation. Asher clutched the steering wheel. Louis dropped his arm. Croatoan! Asher yelled and drove. At once, it was a close race, with Pat in first place, Asher in second, Donnie in third, and Keith in fourth. Ignoring how close Donnie was to his Honda's bumper, Asher scanned for a way to get ahead of Pat and into first place. He found one and took it, taking the lead. At the same time, Donnie followed him in second, though from the way he stayed close on Asher's tail, Asher knew his friend wasn't satisfied with second. Gritting his teeth, Asher blocked Donnie from getting ahead and could almost feel the frustration coming from Lady Blur. Not tonight, old buddy, Asher thought. Tonight's my night. That moment, Asher saw two glowing green lights up ahead. One was a gibberer flying through the woods towards the road. The other was Balloon Boy, bouncing off trees and rolling down the road like a pinball towards the cars. Asher swore. Right off the bat, he thought. If he didn't time this right, either one of those ghosts could hit his car, or either one of those ghosts could hit his car, and there go him and the Honda. Staring ahead, Asher's mind clicked and calculated. He focused on Balloon Boy first, because that ghost was the most immediate threat to him and the other racers. The gibberer would take her time getting onto the road, so he didn't need to deal with her right away. Forgetting her, Asher watched the oncoming giant ball, a face and limbs appearing every couple of seconds on its surface. Instinct took over, and he prepared to change gears and speed up. Balloon Boy was almost upon them, only 50 yards away. Behind him, Donnie was honking his horn. Hurry up, shouted the horn, before we're both killed. Just a little longer. But just before Balloon Boy spun into him, Asher changed gears and floored the accelerator. The Honda Civic shot past Balloon Boy, its passenger mirror scraping against the ghost's glowing green side and leaving a trail of sparks. Behind him, Donnie sped up behind him, missing Balloon Boy entirely, while Pat and Keith managed to dodge it and continue the race. Asher whooped as he heard Donnie rev his engine in celebration. Yeah, Asher thought proudly. How do you like that, you giant bowling ball? As if in answer to his challenge, Asher saw something in his rearview mirror fall out of the sky and land right behind him and Donnie, spinning towards them at a good 35 miles per hour. It was Balloon Boy, and he was about to roll over Lady Blur. Moving quickly, panic rising in him, Asher drifted to the side to let Donnie pull up beside him. Even as he did that, though, Balloon Boy kept up with them, and Asher could hear some sort of keening sound coming from the ghost that sounded like laughter. He couldn't see Pat or Keith, but judging from the lack of an explosion, they were probably still alive and behind Balloon Boy. Maybe they were dealing with the gibberer. Asher looked out the window at Donnie. Donnie looked at him. A message seemed to pass between the two through their eyes, and they nodded. Looking back to the road, he let his finger hover the button for the second nitro tank. Desperate times, he thought, glancing out the rearview mirror as Balloon Boy closed the gap between it and the two vehicles to a couple of yards. Looked at Donnie, got another nod. Look back at the road one last time. 1, 2, 3! Roaring in unison, the Honda and Lady Blur zoomed away from the giant green ghost, barely staying on the road as they zoomed around a corner and onto the next stretch of road. Behind them, Balloon Boy disappeared completely from view. Asher and Donnie whooped and grinned at each other, but a moment later the Honda began to slow down, while Lady Blair continued at the same intense speed. Gunning it, Asher tried to keep up, but soon Donnie was leaving him behind. He could almost hear his friend shouting, "Eat my dust!" as he took first place. No, Asher thought, switching gears and squeezing the steering wheel. This race isn't over yet, dude. Asher turned a corner, doing a dangerous 70 miles per hour on the dark forest roads. He spotted Lady Blur again, under attack by what was probably the scariest ghost at Chaser's Run. The cavalry, seated on his spectral horse and slashing at Lady Blur with his long sword with all the ferocity the dead can muster. Donnie was trying to get away from it, but every time Lady Blur moved, the cavalry moved alongside it, his horse keeping pace with the car as nothing in the world was either. Oh, Jesus, Asher thought, feeling cold suddenly. Of all the ghosts, this one terrified him the most, and it wasn't hard to understand why. Anyone would be scared to see a zombie-like Confederate soldier on a horse trying to get at you with a saber. And to Asher, it seemed like it was on the verge of getting Donnie. An image passed through Asher's head of Donnie's car exploding in a blaze of flames and careening into one of the ancient trees off the road. Shaking his head, he floored the accelerator again, sure that his car would break down in the middle of the road despite all the improvements he'd made to it. Instead, the Honda actually caught up with Lady Blur and the cavalry, the latter looking behind it as if surprised to find someone else sharing the road with it in the Mustang. Let's hope this works, Asher thought, and turned on its brights. Jared Fecht had showed him once that the ghosts could sometimes be confused by putting on your brights, but it only worked for a few seconds, and only if you took them for surprise. It never worked twice in one night. This time, though, it worked. The cavalry raised an arm above its eyes and veered off to the left side of the road, away from Lady Blur. At the same time, Donnie drifted towards the right and slowed down, allowing the Honda to pass by. Turning off his brights, Asher flashed Donnie a thumbs up and hoped his friend saw it before he passed by. Another turn later, and Asher came out of the woods and over the finish line. The race was over. He'd won first place. As the Honda came to a stop, Asher heard a roar go up from the crowd. He looked out the window, saw people applauding and cheering, saw bookies laughing while the people who placed bets on the other drivers swore. He even glimpsed Louis giving him an approving smile. That's all for me, he thought, with a bit of wonder. It took him another second to realize that this was his first time winning first place in the finalists race. And then the winner's joy finally sank in. He stepped out of the car and raised his arms in victory. The crowd responded by cheering louder. From the woods came a roar, and Lady Blur flew out, skidding to a stop 20 feet beyond Asher's Honda. Donnie stepped out, looking steamed. "What the hell, man?" he shouted. Asher ran to Donnie, ignoring the latter's anger. "Dude, you alright?" he asked. "Did the cavalry get you?" "Donnie, I won first place." "No, he didn't get me," Donnie shot back. "I said, what the hell? Your brights cost me that race. That's cheating." "What's the commotion?" Louis appeared beside them, pulling out a cigarette from his pocket and lighting it. "Asher used his brights," Donnie complained, gesturing angrily at Asher. "They distracted me and cost me first place." "I was trying to get the cavalry off your ass, man," Asher shot back, now steamed himself. The least Donnie could do was thank him. "That ghost nearly imploded your car. I was trying to save your ass." "Oh, bullshit," said Donnie. "You cheated, I won." Was the cavalry on your ass?" asked Louis, lighting the cigarette. Donnie looked almost surprised by the question. "Well, yeah, he was, but—" "Did you use your brights to surprise the ghost?" Louis asked Asher. Asher nodded the affirmative. Turning to Donnie, Louis said, "Then you should be thanking your friend. The cavalry's a tough mother to beat off. You're lucky to be alive." "He distracted me," Donnie protested. "And you're not dead," Louis pointed out. You should be grateful for that. Now say thanks and go sulk somewhere else. Kid, here's your winnings. Louis handed Asher his $200 cash prize and went to collect his take from the bookies. Asher looked at the roll of cash. He felt like he'd won $1,000,000. Asher turned to Donnie, expecting to finally get that thank you, but Donnie only stared furiously at him before stalking away. From the crowd, Evan followed, looking slightly worried. It didn't matter to Asher, though, because a moment later he was surrounded by people telling him how awesome he was, asking him what he was going to do with his prize money, wanting to know what happened in the woods. He basked in his glory. I knew tonight would be my lucky night, he thought blissfully. Sometime later, Asher got back to his car and found Melissa Hoover there. Again, she looked nervous, but there was a look of determination about her, too, that Asher had never seen before outside the classroom on exam day. Hi, Asher, she said. Great job out there. First place, that's really something. Thanks, Melissa, he replied, noticing again how nicely moonlight shone upon her hair. My first time winning Chaser's Run. Really, she said? That's so cool. Asher smiled. Yeah, it is. They might have talked more, but then Asher heard someone calling his name. He turned and saw Evan standing at the edge of the crowd, beckoning to him with a commanding finger. To Melissa, he said, Excuse me, and walked towards Evan. He never saw Melissa's look of disappointment. Hey, he said, very aware of how pretty and how upset Evan seemed. What's up? It's Donnie, she said with a scoff. She crossed her arms in front of her chest, and Asher became aware of what was underneath those arms. He's gotten all worked up. I hate him when he's like this. He's such an ass. What'd he do? Asher asked, though he thought he knew what Donnie had done. Oh, you know, she answered. The usual. Walked into the forest, threw a tantrum, talked about cheating and his victory being taken away from him, kicked some rocks and scared a couple of owls out of their nests. Called me a bitch, too, if you can believe that. That's awful, said Asher. He meant it, too. If Evan was his girl, nothing in the world could ever make him call her a bitch. She was just too awesome for that. You're telling me, she said, huffing. Then a gleam came into her eyes. Walk me to my car, she said. It's at the edge of the lot. Asher didn't even look back at his Honda. If he did, he might have seen Melissa looking crestfallen and running off to get a ride from a friend. Instead, he said, Sure, and grinned a look not too different from the one Donnie he had worn earlier in the night. Smiling, Evan led him to the edge of the mishmash of vehicles known as a lot. Evan's car, a burgundy 2012 Ford Edge, was at the furthest corner of the lot, waiting patiently for her. Asher expected her to say goodbye and then get in and drive off, leaving him wishing for something he knew that he wasn't cool enough to have. Instead, she unlocked her car and opened the passenger side back door. Well, she said, looking at him coyly, aren't you going to get in with me? She climbed into the car, and Asher, hardly believing the invitation he'd just received, followed in after. That night, with the doors closed and her back seat leaning all the way back, Asher racked up another personal first on his lucky night. He also provided another reason for what Donnie Griggs, who saw Asher get in his girlfriend's car, planned to do the next time he came to Chaser's Run. And that's all I'm going to read from that today. If you want more, The Binge-Watching Cure Volume 2 is available from Amazon in digital and paperback formats. It's not currently available in audio, but who knows? If enough people buy copies, perhaps someday an audio version will come out. And you know what? It's a great story. It's a great collection of stories, as I said. Many great authors are in here, great stories. Some of them really disturbed me, which is not easy to do. So check it out. And while I still have your attention, I'd like to make an announcement. Some of you are familiar with my novel Rose, which came out almost a year ago, about a little under 10 months ago. And that is also available on Amazon in paperback and ebook format, but also available from Audible in audiobook format. And if you're interested, now you can get uh, signed copies directly from me. How? Well, you can email me at Rami Unger the writer. Rami Unger at RamiUngerTheWriter.com. That's Rami Unger at RamiUngerTheWriter.com. I will include that email in the description below. If you want a signed copy of Rose from sent to you from me, send me an email and we can discuss it. Anyway, that's all for now. Oh, check out the Binge Watching Cure 2 from Claren Books. If you're interested in a signed copy of Rose from me personally, send me an email. Well, stay safe, be healthy, and to all my followers of fear, pleasant nightmares. Bye.